Good point there.
I think the grandchildren
are all
have enough in their memories to.
Okay, that's true. What I'd like to do to start is just go through and go as far back as possible, identify who the people were and what they did. And I'd frankly rather hear your voice than mine.
Well, I can't tell you much about I can't tell you anything about my grandfather and grandmother Gleason, because they were both dead before I was born. They did come over from Ireland, I knew that. He came over and originally went up to Huntington County.
About when did he come over?
Pardon?
About when did he come over?
I think it was around the 1870s. He came over and went to Huntington County. He was up in Broad Top. He taught school. And that was great coal mining country up through there too. So they opened a big mines over around Housedale in Clearfield County.
Mm-hmm.
So he went over to Clearfield County and started a general store.
Now his wife though didn't come, when she came over, she didn't come over to meet him.
No, she come over to meet his brother. He had a brother that was a doctor. And she come over, well, she had known him in Ireland. She come over to marry him. But she ended up marrying my grandfather. He went over to Housedale and started this general store. He must have been very successful, or at least he was successful, because he died when he was about 48. And it left my grandmother with 6 children. Now, every one of the 6 children went away to school. They didn't all graduate from college, but when they finished high school, Dad and his brother, Uncle Jim and Uncle Bill went to St. Vincent's. All 3 of them went to St. Vincent's. Aunt Bert and Aunt Alice went up to Mount Aloysius, and Aunt Catherine went to a school at that time was known as the Shonnell. It was the school that's now the Wheeling Jesuit College down in West Virginia.
Did your grandmother's family ever come over, or was she the only one that came?
They were the only ones that ever came over in either family, except the one brother of his that, as I said, was a doctor. And he left and went to Chicago. I don't know whatever happened to him. I've never known, any of his family. On the other hand, my mother's father and her mother, they were real old stock.
What family was that?
The Rumbergers and the Roushes. My grandmother was a Roush, and he ran a hardware store in Housedale. Now, they were originally from Huntington County too, but her family had come over, all of her family there. I really don't know all of the names.
Well, that's the Seth Roush, and the rest of them the grandmother ran through for the SAR and the DAR. That's the same Roush?
She thought so. When they come over, when the Roushes came over, that was in the mid 1700s. There were, I think, 5 or 6 brothers. They originally went down and settled in Virginia, I think about the middle of the 1700s. Then 4 or 5 of the brothers went west. One brother stayed and went up into Pennsylvania. And we think that that's the one that was a brother of the others that went out to West Virginia, and then I think one of them went on into Ohio. But her family, the earliest ones that came over at the time of William Penn. And they settled down through there, and then they came up into the central part of the state. The families were the Roushes and the Knowles and the Harpers and the Sellers, and I think there was a little bit of Scotch-Irish in there too, because I just happened to think there was another family named farther back, Alexander.
Well, that's interesting because
And,
Alexander's one of my dad's family names.
This Alexander that was an ancestor of my grandmother went out to California, and he was, if not the first, he was one of the first United States senators from California. Now where those Scotch-Irish or whatever they were got in, I don't know, because
Got in the back door as far as you're concerned.
as far as I'm concerned, because I'm Irish.
Yeah.
But
Now going back to the ones that you did know, you knew the Rumbergers well.
oh yeah, I was about, I guess about 12 years old, maybe 14, 12 or 14 years old when my grandfather Rumberger died. I was very close to him. I was the oldest grandchild in the Rumberger. Well, Dad and Mother were married. They were pretty young. In fact, Mother was only 18, I think. Dad was 22 or 23. Dad was a salesman. Now, his father and mother were both dead by that time.
Mm-hmm.
So he was a salesman. And he was always looking for some bargain to sell and everything. So one time, Mother told me, right after they were married, I think she said a year or two after they were married, they shipped a carload of bananas into Houtsdale for some, I don't know, for somebody. Anyway, the person that they shipped them into wouldn't take them, so they had to get rid of them. So I guess they offered them for almost nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very cheap anyway. So Mother said the first thing she knew, Dad come up with a couple of teams following, horses with wagons following them. He bought the whole carload of...
And that's one of those big box cars. We're not talking about we're not talking about a truckload a day. We're talking about a box car.
That's right.
Okay. What do you do with them?
Well, he had to store them someplace before he sold them, so he stored them in the cellar. She said the place smelled like bananas for at least a year, that the odor didn't go away by the time that he sold them.
Okay, now,
well, that was when we lived in Du Bois, and we always went over to Houtsdale for the summer. I usually stayed, after I got a little older, I stayed with my Aunt Alice, but when we first went over, when we only had 4 or 5 kids, they always stayed up at my grandfather Rumberger's. We used to call him Pop. Now, they had a real big old house there. I think it had about, it must have had at least 12, 14 rooms in it. So Mother would go over there for the summer, and she'd take the 5 kids with her, and they'd stay all summer. But I remember one incident. Aunt Ede lived at home that time. That was Mother's sister. And I went into her bedroom, and she had a lot of perfumes and stuff on the table. So I proceeded to take all the perfume and dump it out.
She wasn't real happy about that.
She was so damn mad that she could hardly see. And she started after me, started hollering and came after me. And right at that moment, my grandfather, Runberger, we called him Pop, he came in. He said, no, he said, you just keep quiet and don't you ever say anything to him again about that. After all, he's just a little boy. He doesn't know any different. And you know that he's around. You know that he's always wandering around the house. And if you have anything that you don't want touched, then you put it away. And keep it out of his sight. It's not his fault, it's your fault. So, about the next day or two, he had a prize rubber plant in the living room. It was a big thing. Oh, it must have been at least 5, 6 feet high with all these leaves and everything on it. So I proceeded to strip all the leaves off the tree. So, just as I finished stripping them off, in comes Aunt Ede and Mother. They'd been downtown, and they said, oh, good heavens. That's a plant that your grandfather just likes to sit and look at. Wait till he sees that. Well, just then he came in. He came in, and Aunt Ede said to him, come on, I want to show you something. So he walked into the room. He said, oh, good heavens. And Aunt Ede said, well, you know, he's just a little boy, and he's around here all the time. And if you want to, you don't want him to do something, and you better do something to protect it. And Mother said he just looked for a minute, and then he started laughing. He said, that's right.
He kind of had his hands tied in that one.
He was a wonderful person.